Hi everyone, welcome back. My name's Diana. This is my channel Bookish Di, and today I am talking about the massive book haul that I brought back with me from spending 5 months living with my family. So as I've mentioned before in various videos, and as you can probably tell since I'm in a different location than everything else that is filmed in 2021, aside from my March wrap up, I had spent the last part of 2020 and the early part of 2021 staying with some family. And when I drove back, I brought with me over 30 books that I had picked up during my time there. And it's been a while since I've actually filmed a haul, so I figured now was a good time to do it. So I'm actually going to be splitting this up into 3 parts just because the way that it came out, it made sense just to have like 3 distinct parts. So the first is going to be talking about Star Wars, surprise. The second is going to be talking more about the young adult books. And then last but not least, the various adult books that I picked up in the 5 months. So without further ado, let's get started. And I apologize in advance, it's going to be a long one. So first up we have Star Wars. So the first one that I have is a graphic novel, and it's actually one that I had ordered pre-pandemic. So this is Star Wars Darth Vader, Dark Heart of the Sith by Greg Pak. So this is the relaunched Darth Vader title. It takes place between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, and it returns an old character that we last saw in E.K. Johnson's Ahsoka novels, which I was really excited about. So I've read a bit of this. I'm really behind on the Star Wars comics, so that's kind of like one of my ongoing goals of 2020 is to catch up. But very excited about this. I love Greg Pak's writing. I think he writes Star Wars very, very well. And the Darth Vader comics have always been very good, except for the one written by the scab Dennis Hopeless, but that's beside the point. Anyway, Darth Vader, Dark Heart of the Sith. The next 2 comics I picked up because I had gotten a gift card for Christmas at the local comic store where my family is. And so I ended up picking up two Star Wars comics. The first is Star Wars Out Among the Stars by Jason Aaron, and the second is Star Wars The Ashes of Jedi by Kieran Gillen. So these are in the, and because comics are comics, there are multiple volumes. So this was Star Wars Volume 1 from Marvel. And so these are the comics that take place between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. And so I've read the first like 3 or 4 trades of this. But again, as I mentioned before, I'm behind on reading these. I am trying to build out my collection. So 2 more down. I don't know how many more to go. The next Star Wars books that I have picked up will be no surprise if you've been watching my wrap-ups. These are the various Star Wars The High Republic novels. So first we have Star Wars Light of the Jedi by Charles Soule. This is the special edition from out of print. So beautiful cover illustrating a key scene from the book. I have read this one. I've really enjoyed it. I did think it was there were too many characters in it, but I thought for the start of a publishing initiative, this was a very good start. I think Charles Soule's a very good writer for Star Wars, and I'm very interested to see what comes next with all the characters, just because there were so many introduced, and this book had the unenviable job of seeding a bunch of different plot points. The next was Star Wars High Republic, A Test of Courage by Justina Ireland. I have also read this one. I think this is my favorite of the High Republic books out so far. So this follows a newly minted Jedi Knight, Vernestra Rowe, Padawan Imri, a young man named, I want to say Honesty? I'm completely forgetting on this poor kid's name, but he's the son of an ambassador. And then Aelin Star Wars, who is a teenage inventor, think like young black girl Tony Stark type person, and they get stranded on a planet and they have to survive. Very fun, very good, really enjoyed it, would highly recommend. And then the last of the High Republic novels that I picked up was Star Wars High Republic Into the Dark by Claudia Gray. A consistent theme is I have read this, I really enjoyed this. I thought Claudia Gray worked her usual magic with Star Wars. We follow a Padawan Wraith, 2 additional Jedi, Cormac and Orla, a young pilot, Affie, and then her co-pilot. And my cat's gonna start banging at the door soon. Please ignore her if you hear her. Anyway, again, loved it, would recommend it, and I cannot wait till we find out what Claudia Gray's secret project is for the High Republic that she's teased. And then the final Star Wars book that I picked up while I was with family was Star Wars Alphabet Squadron, Victory's Price by Alexander Freed. This is the final book in the Alphabet Squadron trilogy. I have read the first book in this series and I really enjoyed it. I have not read Shadowfall yet, which is the second book, because honestly, I was not in the right mental state for it in 2020. These books are a really unflinching look at the cost of war and the price and like the toll that it inflicts on everyday soldiers. So for the most part with Star Wars, you get kind of like this high level look and it's very like heroic and good versus evil. And Alexander Freed's specialty really is more of the grunts and more of the morally gray components of Star Wars. And so I've read some of his other books that he's done with Star Wars and I've enjoyed them. I've heard nothing but good things about this finale. So one thing I'm hoping to do this year, dependent on many other things, including Hugo's reading, is to try and actually go back, reread Alphabet Squadron, read Shadowfall, and then read Victory's Price. So that is all the So those are all the Star Wars books that I've picked up, and now we are moving on to the young adult books. So when I was there, I ended up picking up the re-released versions of the Graceling Realm novels by Kristin Kishore. So I have talked about these books in the context of I recently read Winterkeep and I adored it. And I decided to pick these up because these are books that I do plan on rereading at some point. And I think the new covers are really beautiful. And I think Kristin Kishore just does such a good job of writing her worlds and writing her characters. And Bitter Blue is honestly, I reread the end of it and it made me cry. I think Bitter Blue in particular does such a good job of exploring the exploring healing from trauma, exploring, you know, what happens next and how do we as a country move on from this really traumatic event that collective event that we've gone through. And so, yeah, love these books, very excited. I finally have my own copy. And then the rest of these books are going to be in no particular order. And a lot of them I have not read yet. So I then picked up in February, C.A. Martinez and the Moonlight Beginning of Everything by Raquel Vasquez-Gilliland. This is a book about a young girl, C.A. Martinez, whose mother disappears and it's thought that she was picked up and deported by ICE. And so Cia goes out into the desert to light candles in her mom's memory, and then stuff happens. So I'd actually picked this up. It was part of a blind date with a book deal that I got at Bookshop Santa Cruz. And they were talking about how it's similar to Aristotle and Dante, Discover the Universe, which I adore, that there's a Bruja grandma who like advises from beyond the grave. And so this book, based on that, sounded really appealing, and I think I'm gonna like this. I don't know when I'm gonna be getting around to reading it, and you're gonna see that's kind of unfortunately a consistent theme for a lot of these books that I've picked up. Next is Never Look Back by Lilian Rivera. This is a modern day retelling of Orpheus and Eurydice. So that's a Greek myth that I really enjoy, despite it being really tragic. Hadestown was one of my absolute favorite pieces of media from like 2019 and 2020. And I'm really interested to see how Rivera translates this. So the main character, so this is set in the Bronx, and the female character has come from New York from Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria hit it. So I'm really interested to see the type of fantastical elements that Rivera brings into this book. So the next one I got as a gift, although I was the one who selected it. So it is Miss Meteor by Anne-Marie McLemore and Taylor K. Mejia. So I have read books by both of these authors and I love it. And this book had me at beauty pageant, but queer, and Selena, and maybe aliens and magical realism. And so this book follows two former friends, Letha and Chicky, and the beauty pageant that they both enter. And yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about this. I might try and read it later this month. I don't know yet. I have a lot of various things happening in terms of like library books and Hugo stuff, but yeah, I love both of these authors. This book looks absolutely delightful. Another book written by an author who I have loved everything I've read by them is Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Malinda Lo. This is her new YA historical. It is sapphic. So it follows Lily, who is growing up in 1950 San Francisco in the midst of the Red Scare, as she discovers her sexuality and goes to a lesbian bar. And Malinda Lo has talked a lot about the research that she's done and the history that she incorporated. And Malinda Lo was one of the first queer YA authors that I read way back when. And like I said, I've loved everything that she's written. And I don't read a whole lot of YA historical just because a lot of it just honestly doesn't really interest me, but this sounds in particular pretty amazing. And I trust Malinda Lo. I trust that this will be exquisitely written, and it is something, I think this is gonna be high up on my May TBR. The next one is by an author I've also read. It is the Swan Writers by Erin Bow. So I had read the Scorpion Rules a few years ago, and that is set in a future where a AI has taken over various weapon systems and as a way to enforce world peace, holds the children of world leaders hostage. And so the main character of this book is named Greta. She is the Duchess of Halifax, if I'm remembering right. And so everything kicks off when a mysterious young boy gets brought to the compound where she is being raised with the other hostages. And I found the Scorpion Rules to be really well written. It was beautiful and heartbreaking. I thought the sci-fi element was really interesting. And so there's not much I can talk about in terms of the summary of the Swan Writers without massively spoiling the Scorpion Rules. But this is something that has been on, that I have been thinking about reading for a really long time, and I just decided to finally pick it up because I do have a copy of the Scorpion Rules as well. Next, I have Lost in the Never Woods by Aidan Thomas. So I haven't read the Cemetery Boys yet, although I will be for the Lodestar voting, but I've heard nothing but good things about that, and hearing the description of this book really interested me. So it is a Peter Pan retelling. It follows this young girl, this teenage girl, Wendy, who had previously disappeared along with her brothers, and she was the only one found. And so years later, kids start disappearing again. And this boy, Peter, who Wendy thought she had imagined, is the one who comes and appears again. And so I think this will be a really interesting Peter Pan retelling. It is set in coastal Oregon, which I'm very interested to see how that affects the story, because the Pacific Northwest coast is kind of spooky and mysterious at times. And I know Adri from Perpetual Pages read this and really enjoyed it, so something to look forward to. Another queer fairy tale retelling by a Latinx author I'm also looking forward to, or I also bought, is The Mirror Season by Anne-Marie McLemore. So I'd mentioned before that I really enjoy their writing. I find their writing to be really lush, magical realism that I enjoy. And so this is a retelling of the Snow Queen, and it centers on I'm so bad at remembering people's names. It centers on Graciela, who, along with a boy, is sexually assaulted at a party, and she remembers he doesn't. And so this book is dealing with their trauma and their healing and the consequences of what happens. And I'm gonna need to be in the right mental space to read this, but I trust Mackmore, I trust what they're doing with this book, and I'm sure this will be something that I love just like the rest of their novels. If you have followed me for a while, you know that I really enjoy the Rick Riordan Presents books, and so I had picked up City of the Plague God by Sarwat Chadha. So this is a middle grade novel taking inspiration from Mesopotamian mythology. It follows a young Muslim boy who is dealing with gods in New York City after his brother disappears. And Chadha has talked about how he was a little uncertain about releasing this book given we're still in a pandemic, but like I said, I really enjoy the Rick Riordan Presents line. I have yet to read one that has disappointed me, and so this was kind of a no-brainer for me to pick up. The next YA book, and we're almost at the end of the YA section here, the next one that I picked up is one that I have read since then. It is Thorne by Intisar Kanani. This is a YA fantasy retelling of The Goose Girl. I have talked about this in both my Tome Topple vlog and my March wrap-up. I really enjoyed this. I definitely want to pick up the sequel at some point, and I think this is definitely going to be an author who I continue to follow just because I really enjoyed her writing, although I did have some issues with the pacing. So the next two books, and the last two books of the YA section, are ones that I got from Owl Crate. So I decided to start subscribing to Owl Crate just because I wanted like some nice mail instead of bills and stuff. So the first one is The Gilded Ones by Namina Forna. This is a West African inspired YA fantasy, and it follows a young girl, Decca, who, when she's 16, it's discovered she has gold blood, and so she is given a choice by a mysterious older woman. You can either stay in your village and potentially die, or you can join a group of similar young women who are tasked with protecting their kingdom. I've heard very good things about this. I really love the cover from the Owl Crate edition, and I think this will be a really great read. And then the last book is Sweet and Bitter Magic by Adrienne Toomey. This had been on my radar for a while because it is a YA sapphic fantasy, and it follows a witch who has, after she's been discovered using some dark magic, stripped of her ability to love and feel emotions, and then another young woman who is a source of a magic, considered a source, so someone who witches can tap and like has a lot of access to magic but can't use it. And so they make a deal to try and undo a curse that has caused Ren, the source, her father, to fall ill. In exchange, Ren will give up the love that she has for her father, and they fall in love. I don't think that's a spoiler given what we know about the book. But anyway, I'm very excited to read this. I think it'll be very good. So that was the YA section, and so next is the adult section. And so first up, we have two books that are not fiction. So the first one is Star Wars Knitting the Galaxy. This was a Christmas present for my sister. I knit, obviously. I'm on the stitchin' bitch. I love Star Wars, obviously. And so this was, I'm really glad that she bought this for me. I'm looking forward to making some of these items. I haven't looked too closely into it yet, but there's definitely like some sweaters and stuff that I think will be fun to make. And then the second one is The World of Critical Role. And this is a book detailing the history of the actual play video series. I enjoy Critical Role. I'm very far behind, but this book goes into the history behind Critical Role. It talks about the characters, items, the world, gives a look ahead. I have read part of this, and the art in this is absolutely lovely. I think that I do find it really helpful to have like a collection of the different characters, and yeah, looking forward to having this on my shelf once I actually move things around and shelve it. Next is the Shauna Maguire portion of the adult fantasy section. So first I have Across the Green Grass Fields. This is the 6th novella in the Wayward Children series. This follows a intersex teenager who who discovers her door that leads to the Hooflands. And we haven't met Ryan yet. I believe her name is Ryan? Regan. We haven't met Regan yet in like the present day portion of the series. So I'm really interested to see how this ties in. And Maguire has said there's a reason that we're getting Regan's story before we meet her. Next was Calculated Risk. This is the latest book in the Encrypted series. This is the final book of Sarah's books so far. And not much I can say about it without being a big spoiler, but the previous book, Imaginary Numbers, left Sarah in a very tight spot. I am behind on this series, but I do plan on catching up soon. And I like the Encrypted books, not quite as much as the October Day ones, but I do enjoy the family dynamics, and I like that we do get different characters. And speaking of October Day, I ended up picking up the 10th anniversary edition of Rosemary and androo. So this is the first October Day novel. This edition comes with a bonus novella that goes into Toby's past. And while Rosemary and androo is not my favorite book in the October Day series, it's very much not only like a first book in the series, but a very like first author's published novel. It does a really great job of setting up the world and making you interested in the cast of characters, in my opinion. So I am excited to finally have the 10th anniversary edition. I had been wanting to pick it up for a while and I just hadn't, and so I'm glad to have it in my collection. Next is a book, again, that I had ordered pre-pandemic that finally arrived, and it is How to Catch a Queen by Alyssa Cole. This is the first book in her Runaway Royals series, and I adored her Reluctant Royals series. I thought that it was really well written. It was really enjoyable. I love the characters, and so this book is dealing with Shanti and King Sanyu and politics, and anyway, I'm looking forward to this. I need to set some time to read it. I meant to read it earlier this year, and then I haven't really been in the mood for romance novels, weirdly enough. Like last year I was reading a lot of romance novels. Like looking back, romance was one of the ones that I was reading the most, but this year I don't think I've read a romance novel yet this year. Anyway, I'm glad this finally arrived. This was supposed to come out earlier in 2020, and then it got moved back to December with the pandemic. So it is finally in my hands, and I actually do need to read this before the second book in this series comes out in late May. Next, we have a trio of Tor.com novellas, 2 of which I've read, 1 of which I haven't read yet. So the first one is Remote Control by Nnedi Okorafor. This follows a young girl living in Ghana, Sankofa, who, due to a mysterious seed, gets the power to cause people to die, which she can use to defend herself or also ease suffering for folks who ask for it. And she is accompanied by a mysterious fox. And I really enjoyed this. This is definitely more meditative than some of Okorafor's other novellas, but I thought it was really well done and I really enjoyed it. The next one is Ring Shot by P. Jelly Clark. If you've seen, there's a dog outside. If you've seen my March wrap up, you know that I really enjoyed this book. This is a horror novella set in 1920s Georgia, and it deals with a young woman, Maurice, and her compatriots who are fighting these eldritch horror beings called the Ku Kluxes, and they have to try and stop them from enacting a plan that involves a massive screening of Birth of a Nation. Highly recommend this book. It it does get very bloody and kind of body horror-y, so if that's not your thing, this one might be a skip, but I am not normally a body horror person and I really enjoyed this. And yeah, like I had mentioned in my March wrap-up, I'm really looking forward to Clark's full novel coming out in May as well. And the last novella is Zen Cho's The Order of the Pure Moon Reflected in Water. This is her Wuxia novella. I adore Zen Cho. I have read her Sorcerer, The True Queen and Sorcerer to the Crown books, and those are amazing. I'm looking forward to her new novel, so I'm pretty sure this won't disappoint me either. We're getting towards the end here, thank God. So the next one I picked up is Masters of Poison by Andrea Hairston. Hairston is an Otherwise Award winner, and I believe it was Rachel at Colonnati had read this and really enjoyed it, and I really thought the cover was gorgeous, and so I ended up picking it up. Hairston's previous novels are going to be re-released by Tor in the next 2 years, so I think if I like this one, she might be another author whose books I pick up as they come out. Next is Soulstar by C.L. Polk. This is the conclusion to the Witchmark series, which is called the Kingston Cycle. So I read Witchmark and loved it. I haven't read Storm Song yet. That's the second book, but this is the finale. This follows Robin, who we meet in Witchmark, and it deals with the aftermath of some rather drastic upheavals that occur in the previous 2 books. And so based on the back, it's dealing with healing, it's dealing with creating a more just society, it's what happens when the political systems around you change, and how you push forward despite resistance. I've heard nothing but good things. It will potentially happen this year as a goal to finish series. So Soulstar by C.L. Polk. Next is The Unbroken by C.L. Clarke. This takes place in this is North African inspired fantasy, and so it follows 2 characters, Luca, who is a princess who is trying to get her uncle off the throne, and then Touraine, who was kidnapped as a child and forced to become a soldier, and this is a sapphic novel as well. I'm not gonna lie, I partially bought it because this cover is gorgeous, but again, this is another one where I've heard good things about it. Clarke has been working more as like a short fiction person, so this is their first novel, so I'm hoping that it works for me, because I'm definitely like looking for some new epic fantasy. Next is When No One Was Watching. Whoops. Next is When No One Was Watching by Alyssa Cole. This is her first thriller. This takes place in Brooklyn, and it deals with gentrification and people disappearing. And as I mentioned before, I really love Alyssa Cole's work. I think she's a fantastic writer. I've heard good things about this, and I am trying to read more like non-SFF stuff. So I think this, when I'm in the mood for a thriller, will hit the spot. And the last 3 books are books that were given to me by friends. So first is Broken Queen and the Cerulean Queen by Sarah Kosloff. And so Renee had sent me these. She had actually sent me the first 2 books as well. These are published by Tor. And I haven't read the first 2 books yet, but I now have the complete series. So that'll be nice just to be able to, if I like the first book, just read all the way through. This I think was like a publishing experiment by Tor, where they published the entire series like within a 4-month period. And I don't know, I haven't heard much about this series, but it did kind of sound interesting, so we'll see what happens. And then the last book was sent to me by Rachel because she ended up with an extra copy. It is A Desolation Called Peace by Arcady Martin. This is the sequel to A Memory Called Empire, and I haven't read A Memory Called Empire yet. I know it won the Hugo for Best Novel last year, but again, I have heard nothing but good things. I know a lot of my friends are really looking forward to this novel, so hopefully I'll end up reading it this year. We'll see. I have a lot of potential reading projects on my plate, and I'm trying not to disappoint myself by making promises about what I might read and then failing that. So yeah, 30 plus books. It is a lot. I am judging myself a little. Like, I know, like, over the course of like 5 months, that's not I don't know, it's like 6 books a month, so never mind. Anyway, do any of these books sound interesting? Have you read any of these books? Do you have any opinions? Please let me know in the comments down below. If you want to judge me, please do that as well. Thank you all so much for watching. If you like what you see, please subscribe, and I will talk with you all later. Bye.